All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. And today we are going deep, literally deep,
Ooh, I like that.
into the world of pipeline inspections.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about how companies decide which pipelines to inspect first. These pipelines are really critical
Yeah,
for carrying oil and gas all across the country.
absolutely.
And just like we need checkups to catch problems, pipelines need them too. But instead of doctors, we're talking about inline inspections, or ILI.
Inline inspection, yeah.
And this uses some pretty cool technology.
Oh, yeah, some really neat technology. It's like sending a little robot
Oh,
inside the pipeline to look for corrosion or anything that could cause problems later.
okay, so I get why inspections are important,
Yeah.
but there are thousands of miles of pipelines out there.
Oh, yeah.
Can't inspect all of them all the time, right?
You got it. That's right.
So how do they decide which ones to prioritize?
It's a very involved process, especially when we're talking about gathering lines and production and things like that. It's a lot of factors.
So let's break it down.
Okay.
What are some of the things that they consider when they're making these decisions?
You always got to start with the basics, right?
Okay,
Age of the pipeline is a big one.
makes sense.
Older pipelines are more likely to have wear and tear, just like anything else, so they're going to be higher priority. The material of the pipeline, some materials are more vulnerable to corrosion than others.
So it's knowing your family history.
Yeah, exactly.
Like some pipelines are just predisposed to certain problems.
Exactly. And then the conditions that the pipeline operates under, higher pressure, what kind of fluids it carries, temperatures, all that stuff can really impact a pipeline's lifespan and increase the risk of having problems.
Okay, so we've got age, materials, operating conditions.
Yeah.
What about the environment that the pipeline's in? Does that matter too?
Oh, for sure. The environment is super important. You think about a pipeline running through a swamp versus one buried in a desert.
Totally different.
Totally different environments, moisture, soil acidity, even stray electrical currents.
Wow.
All that can cause external corrosion on the outside of the pipeline.
So it's not just what's going through it, but it's what's around it.
Yeah, and then you have pipelines that are near urban areas. And if there's a problem there, the consequences could be much worse.
Yeah.
Because it could impact people and buildings and things like that. So that's a big factor.
So the stakes are higher in certain places.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've got age, materials, operating conditions, and the environment.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
So another thing we look at, just like a doctor would look at your medical history, is historical data. So past inspection results,
Right.
repairs, leaks, if there's been any, all that stuff gives us a good picture of the pipeline's track record. It's like trying to predict the future by looking at the past.
It's like a detective using clues to solve a case.
Exactly.
But instead of fingerprints, we're talking about corrosion and leaks.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Oh.
We have to consider not just the pipeline itself, but what's happening underground at the source of the oil and gas.
Wait, so you're saying what's happening in the wells can tell us something about the pipelines above ground?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You got to remember these gathering pipelines are connected to wells that are drilled way down deep into the earth. And those wells have tubing and casing,
Okay.
the metal pipes that line the wellbore, and those can corrode just like pipeline. Can we call that downhole corrosion?
Downhole corrosion. Okay, so I'm with you so far. How does corrosion down in the well affect the pipelines all the way up here?
Think of it this way. If you see a lot of corrosion happening in the wells in a certain oil or gas field,
Okay.
it's a pretty strong sign that the environment down there is corrosive.
Makes sense.
And that same environment can impact the pipelines that are hooked up to those wells.
Oh, so it's like a warning sign. If the wells are having problems, the pipelines might be at risk too.
Exactly. It's all about connecting the dots, seeing the bigger picture.
That's incredible. It's like a whole other level of detective work, but actually use all this information to make decisions. Are we talking spreadsheets and calculators, or is there like some high-tech wizardry going on here?
Role, but it's a lot more sophisticated than that.
Okay.
These days, companies use these super powerful data models and integrity management systems
Wow.
to analyze all these factors. It's like a credit score for pipelines.
The credit score for pipelines.
Yeah, they crunch all the data and they give each segment of the pipeline a hazard score.
So the higher the score, the more likely it is to have a problem.
Yep, and that score helps them decide which pipelines to inspect first.
So it's like a giant risk assessment algorithm for pipelines?
Exactly.
That's amazing. But I'm guessing this isn't a one-person job.
Oh, no.
Who's involved in this whole process.
It's definitely a team effort. You've got engineers, operations folks, regulatory experts, all working together to analyze the data, make decisions, and keep those pipelines safe. And it's not like a one-time thing either. It's
Yeah.
an ongoing process. Things can change quickly.
Okay.
And sometimes you have to adjust your priorities based on new information.
So it's not just about spotting problems, but it's about understanding why they're happening.
Exactly. And sometimes what we find in one pipeline can tell us a lot about other pipelines in the system.
Really, what do you mean?
Let's say you have a group of pipelines that share a lot of similarities.
Okay.
Maybe they were built around the same time,
Okay.
using the same materials, carrying similar fluids. We call those sibling pipelines.
Sibling pipelines. So it's like a family history of pipeline problems.
You could say that.
Oh.
And here's the key. If one of those sibling pipelines starts showing signs of trouble, there's a good chance its siblings might be at risk too. And that knowledge is really valuable because it lets companies be proactive.
Right.
If one pipeline in a group is showing signs of corrosion, they can bump up the inspection priority for its siblings and hopefully catch any problems before they become big issues.
This is amazing. Looking at the whole system from the well to the pipeline, we've got this whole new dimension to think about when it comes to pipeline safety.
It is. It's about taking a holistic view,
Good.
using all the information we have to make smart decisions.
That's so cool.
It's not just about the technical stuff either. It's about having a culture of being proactive and working together, where everybody involved knows how important pipeline integrity is, and everybody works together to keep things running smoothly.
This has been an incredible deep dive so far.
Yeah.
This fascinating world of downhole connections and sibling pipelines.
Okay.
It's incredible how much goes into keeping these pipelines safe and working properly.
Absolutely.
But I have to ask, what's the biggest takeaway here? What's the one thing you really want our listeners to understand about prioritizing pipeline inspections?
If I had to boil it all down to one sentence, I'd say that prioritizing pipeline inspections isn't just about checking boxes. It's about understanding how everything's connected and using that knowledge to make the best decisions. We're not just looking at pipelines one by one. We're thinking about the whole network, the big picture, and all the things that can affect how well it works.
So it's like a giant web and everything is connected.
That's a great way to put it, and that's why we have to be so careful when we analyze things.
Yeah.
We're always gathering information, looking for patterns,
Yeah.
and any little hint that something might go wrong.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It definitely keeps us on our toes, but it's super important.
I bet.
These pipelines are the backbone of our energy system,
Right.
and we got to make sure they're safe and reliable.
We've talked a lot about the technical stuff, data models, inspections, but I'm curious, what about human judgment? What role does that play in all this?
That's a great question. Even with all the fancy technology we have, human expertise is still key. The data gives us a starting point, but it's the people with experience.
Okay.
The engineers, the inspectors, the operators, they're the ones who really understand these systems,
Okay.
and they're the ones who make the final call.
So it's a mix of science and art.
Exactly. We use the data to guide us, but we also rely on gut feeling experience and knowing what's right.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
From the basics of pipeline inspections to these fascinating connections between wells and pipelines and those sibling pipelines.
Yeah.
It's clear that prioritizing these inspections is complicated. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the world of pipeline inspections. A huge thanks to our expert for joining us today
My pleasure.
and taking us on this incredible journey through the world of pipeline inspections.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating to see all the work that goes on behind the scenes to keep those pipelines operating safely.
Absolutely.
And to all our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for this really complex but vital industry.
For sure. It's a critical part of our infrastructure.
It is.
And it's always evolving, so it's important to stay informed
But absolutely.
and understand the challenges and the solutions.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Okay.
But keep those brains buzzing. And until next time, stay curious.